The Inquisition has always been one of my favorite forces in the Warhammer 40k universe, acting as an independent, secret force that would hunt down any group or activity considered heretical. Recently, Games Workshop decided to release Ashes of Faith, a Killteam box full of new Inquisition minis. This Killteam captures so well the classical Inquisition concept, where you would have an Inquisitor leading an Imperial force accompanied by its retinue. The retinue is formed by an eclectic group of individuals ranging from sages, acolytes, and other fanatics. Each of them would buff the Inquisitor in one way or another. Your Inquisitorial force then could take command of any other Imperial force, just like in this kill team, where you ally other Imperial forces such as Stormtroopers. So, let's get to it. The leader of this Inquisitorial kill team is an interrogator, an Inquisitor in the making, trying to ascend the ranks of the organization. I have chosen an all-Inquisitor holding a bolt gun, not quite the auto pistol the interrogator carries, but close enough. For the Exorcist, I'm using the model it was most likely based off. However, I feel the new sculpt is a downgrade compared to the old one. The older pose seems much more dynamic, holding the shotgun one-handed. I am kit bashing Acadian Sergeant as a Death War veteran. To replicate the lens, I borrow a halberd from a man-at-arms kit from All Warhammer Fantasy. I try to imitate the pose of the veteran by replacing it over the shoulder of the former Acadian soldier. The fighting knife is replaced with a machete from the Free Guild militia kit. These two weapons will make our close combat specialist look like a menace on the battlefield for sure. Servitors are the perfect representation of the grim darkness of the 40k universe, a human converted into a servile weapon. One of the old-school Servitor sculpts does the trick here. For the weapon choice, I'm going for both the Heavy Bolter and the Multi-Melta. A Katachan sculpt will be the base for the Penal Legionnaire. This one is armed with a chainsword and a flamer pistol. I hit the bits box and get a flamer from a Space Marine Tactical Squad kit. To make it look closer to a flamer pistol, I cut the barrel down and glue the shroud to the frame of the gun. While the weapon looks somewhat comically big, it's not a challenge for a Katachan veteran to hold it one-handed. Then I reuse the chainsword of the Acadian Sergeant, completing the look of the Legionnaire. Mystics can sense changes in the warp that announce the coming of demons. It seemed appropriate to use the old Mystic model to represent the current one. While the banner is missing, the sculpt conveys a similar look as the model in the box. The pistolier at first sight reminded me of a tech priest, so I said, why not base the kit bash in one after all? Being the most prominent features of the pistolier the scope plasma pistol and the silenced autogun, I searched in the bits box for lookalike weapons. While a regular plasma pistol was easy enough to find, silenced weapons are uncommon, so I have taken the body of a bolt gun and attaching a short piece of plastic tubing makes the trick. Looking at my Inquisition collection, it seemed pretty obvious what model I was going for to run as the Quest Keeper. The all-metal Hierophant is equipped with a prominent eviscerator. Even the toughest enemy of the Imperium can be cut in half by this enthusiastic guy. The Tome Skull is a servo skull with a book, not much to say about it. I think this is the most unoriginal model in the set, so I decided to use a cherubim with a scroll as a proxy. I had some trouble finding a proxy for the Lightner. In the end, I have opted for a Sister Sororitas Hospitaller. The main attribute of the Lightner are its two short swords, so I have decided to simply add a couple of knives to the Sisters model and call it a day. Autosavants are a non-combatant henchmen that are capable of storing and accessing vast tracts of information. I found in my collection a really similar model, which I believe is an older sculpt of the same model. When working on a long project such as this one, I like to start painting the skin of the model. Once done, the miniatures will have a more finished look than if I painted, let's say, the robes. This will help us to keep on going when painting more boring parts of the minis. The colors that we're using for the skin are corn red, Cadian Fleshtone, and Pallid Witch Flesh. We apply a gentle base coat of a 50-50 mix of corn red and Cadian Fleshtone. This creates a reddish face from where to build up a nice contrasty skin. Once done with the base coat, we increase the Cadian Fleshtone ratio to about 70% in the mix and start working on the raised areas. Remember that we want to create a smooth gradient so that the skin looks realistic and natural. Here we need to take into account how big or small the areas where we need to create this gradient are. For instance, a big surface such as the muscles in the arms is more forgiving, as you don't need to be as precise with your work to make the skin look realistic. However, the face requires a greater level of care. When someone looks at the mini, the eyes are going to be drawn into it. We repeat the same step, but this time using just Caddy and Fleshstone directly, and picking up a smaller portion of the raised areas of course. Then, to start adding contrast, we mix pallid witch flesh to Caddy and Fleshstone. As say, try to be careful this time, especially with raised areas for the face such as chin, cheekbones and eyebrows. This contrast in these parts what makes a realistic face. Follow the same principle with the hands, making the knuckles the most highlighted area. We increase the concentration of pallid witch flesh and only pick the most raised areas. Our skin is almost ready at this step. Notice how the reddish base coat we use still shows. Finally, we use some of whites to highlight some details of the miniature. There is no need to overdo this step, and applying it only in selected spots will help us read the features of the face of this handsome Inquisitor. Red is the color of the Inquisition, so it is only natural that we use an ice saturated red as the main color for this Killteam. We base coat the robes of our pistolier in corn red. Remember to thin your paints and give several coats until we reach a uniform color. To start building our saturated red, we mix corn red and wild rider red to about a 50-50 mix. We paint the raised areas and leave the crevices alone. To build the fire red tone that we are going for, we increase the amount of wild rider red on the mix and keep picking the raised areas, always leaving some of the color from the previous pass to show. To call the row finish, we need to further increase the contrast. To this end, we first throw directly some wild rider red to it. Finally, we add titanium white to it and add the finishing touches. This Desperado is now ready to rumble. To contrast with the bright red, we are painting armor, guns and clothing in a duller color. The paints we're using are Dark Reaper and Thunderhawk Blue. We start giving a base coat of Dark Reaper in thin layers until we get an even covering. Then, similarly as we did for the red parts, we are going to mix a 50-50 ratio of Dark Reaper and Thunderhawk Blue. We start building up the gradient by applying this lighter color in raised areas. Then we switch to Thunderhawk Blue and repeat the process. To get the contrast level we are going for, we add some titanium white acrylic ink to the Thunderhawk Blue and add it lightly over the most raised areas. The dark blue, in combination with the red, already brings me some Inquisition vibes. For the Quest Keeper and the Exorcist, we are going for leathery robes. This will be a nice counterpoint to the neat-looking garments of the rest of the team, helping to sell the ragtag nature of the inquisitorial retinue. We start by applying a base coat of Rhinox hide. To start building up the leathery look, we mix Rhinox hide and Vallejo English uniforms evenly and start applying it over the raised areas. Then we apply the same process, but this time directly using Vallejo English uniform color. To make a leather piece look great, it's important to go for a weathered look. To achieve this, we apply Vallejo earth color to the parts of the clothes that would suffer the most. This paint has a yellow look that will help selling the weathered look. From here, we keep adding titanium white ink to the mix and paint the most raised areas to build up the leathery look. For painting metallic surfaces, I like using Vallejo paints as these have an excellent covering. First, we base coat the robotic parts of the Auto Savant with Cam Metal Grey. This is a great foundation for building metallic looking parts as it provides a dark base onto which build contrast. You can apply as many layers to the gradient as you want, but to keep it simple, we are going to highlight it with white aluminium. This provides enough detail so that the miniature looks good even from close. We highlight the most interesting features of the miniature such as shoulders, robotic arms, and metallic eye. To create a nice contrast with metallic parts we have already painted, we are going to apply a brass tone to small details such as fixtures and some tubes. We are using a metallic paint from the Vallejo range, copper in this case. Here, I have decided to dull it down a little bit by mixing it with Rhinox hide. A good Inquisitor does not leave home without a bunch of scrolls apparently. This cherubim is considered enough to carry them all over the battlefield for him. After applying a base coat of Rhinox hide, we cover everything in Vallejo earth. From here, the process is really similar as to what explained before. This time, we keep adding Ushabti bone to the mix and draw some horizontal lines over the scroll. After the desired look is achieved, it comes the fun part. Take a brown Sharpie and just stipple some horizontal lines over the scroll. This is the easiest way to make them look amazing and it requires almost no effort. You can actually go to town with it, and if you feel brave, you can even do some drawings to it. With the Mystic, I am including some color variety within the retinue, while still keeping it consistent with the color code for this skill team. We are painting its robe in a funky purple tone, and the glasses in bright pink. For the robes, we apply a base coat of Genestealer purple. From there, we can quickly build some contrast by adding titanium white to the mixture and applying it to the raised areas, as always. The glasses are painted in Emperor's Children pink. Then we each highlight them with some pinkish off-white mix. That's a funky looking guy for sure. To reflect the countless battles that the veteran has witnessed, we are painting its weapons in rust colors. My recipe for this is quite simple. Apply first a base coat of Rhinox hide or any other dark brown for that matter. Then stipple gunmetal gray all over the piece. For this you can either use an older brush or a piece of sponge from packaging. Once done, repeat the process, but this time with a 50-50 mix of Trolls Layer Orange and Rhinox hide. To add some visual interest, we are going to highlight the edges with white aluminum from Vallejo. Here we want to be inconsistent, as this will sell the idea that the weapon has seen some rough use. I want this skill team to be able to join my other Imperial forces, so I don't want to base them in a way that would contrast too much with my other armies. A simple industrial looking base would fit in with almost any other one and do the trick. I am covering all the bases in a mesh tape I got from the hardware store. Then use some cereal box cardboard and cut some straight shapes and glue them over the mesh. Get rid of the excess material by cutting it with some curved scissors, preferably. Here I have tried to vary the layout of the cardboard to create some nice variation. Then I spray painted everything in black and apply the same process as for the rusted weapons. To add some visual contrast, I take the same mix I have used for the rust and dilute it. Cover some random spots with it, and once it dries, it will create an uneven rust pattern on the bases. So here it is. This Inquisition team is ready to eradicate heretics and demonic forces from the galaxy. This kill team will look excellent on a Killteam board, and the best part is the uniqueness of it. If you enjoy content like this, make sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.